Chapter 37. Cuba slips away from exile's dreams. It had been a week since Mama had called, and the Baxters and I had not stopped making plans. First, Mrs. Baxter persuaded her friend Gladys to let Mama and us stay in the guest cottage behind her house. Mrs. Baxter explained that Gladys's daughter had used it as an art studio before moving to New York, but that now it sat empty. Plus, while visiting Gladys, she'd get to see us too. Then, the parishioners at St. Mary's pitched in, donating items to furnish the cottage. We got everything from a frying pan to a small sofa. Mr. Baxter picked everything up, and before you knew it, we had the place looking pretty nice. Mrs. Baxter even got her brother to hire Mama to help count inventory on the weekends. It wasn't the life we used to have, but that life didn't exist in Cuba either. I wish Papa could come too, Frankie said, smoothing back his greased hair. I know, but it's really not up to him. I gazed at the large airport clock. Mama's flight was due to arrive in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 300 seconds. Why did the clock's second hand have to move so slowly? She's going to be amazed at how much you've both grown. I simply can't wait to meet her. Lucia, do you think I look all right? I want to make a good impression. Mrs. Baxter adjusted her skirt. You look fine, Helen, Mr. Baxter answered for me. The girl has other things on her mind. I smiled. She'll love you, but not because of anything you could wear. She squeezed my arm. I'm going to miss you so much, Lucia. I'll be visiting Gladys now more than ever. Poor Gladys, Mr. Baxter muttered as he adjusted his tie. Frankie laughed and I jabbed him in the ribs. Look, Mrs. Baxter pointed to a sign over the airline counter. Flight 24 from Chicago had just arrived. Mama was here. I smoothed the wrinkles in my dress. We were all wearing our very best clothes. But I worried about what Mama would think when she saw us. Frankie had grown about 3 inches, but he still looked more or less the same. I, on the other hand, was different. Not only had my appearance changed with my new haircut, makeup, and growing curves, but I felt different inside. Somewhere between that plane ride out of Cuba and the drive to Lincoln to pick up Mama, I had grown up. So let's pause here. And I want you to think about the whole book so far because this is our last chapter. Do you agree that Lucia has grown up? And then I want you to use an adjective to describe her at the beginning of the book, and then an adjective to describe her now. Mama's little girl wasn't here, but would she like the new me? Maybe I shouldn't have worn any makeup, but this was the new me. Yet if she saw me and didn't approve, then what? I fidgeted with the buttons on my sweater. What would she think of the Baxters, Jennifer, even Eddie? The excited butterflies in my stomach turned on me. They were rising up to my throat. I felt like I was going to be sick. What if Mama thought I'd abandoned everything she'd taught me? What if I disappointed her? Frankie pulled my arm. Do you think Mama will be upset that I love Mrs. Baxter? Before I could answer, Mrs. Baxter took Frankie's hand and inched forward. Here we go, she said. A stewardess opened two big doors, and a few people started to walk past us. Flight 24? Mr. Baxter asked a passenger who stopped to buy a newspaper. The man nodded. Frankie clung to Mrs. Baxter's waist as I tried to force my eyes to see farther through the crowd. Frankie, Lucia, a voice called out. It was Mama. She was weaving between and around people, trying to get to us. Frankie darted toward her. She looked the same as the last time I'd seen her. I even recognized the dress she was wearing. In a moment she had dropped her purse and lifted Frankie off the ground, smothering him with kisses. Tears ran past my cheeks and down my neck. I felt as if I were going in slow motion, every step bringing me only slightly closer to Mama. What would she say? What would she think of me? Then I was in her arms. Mama was crying and laughing at the same time. She kissed away my tears and looked at me, really looked at me. I waited. She shook her head. Ay, Lucia, you look so grown up. Que bella estás. You've become such a beautiful young lady. Mama, I cried, burying my head in her neck. Ay, Mama, I am so proud of you, she whispered in my ear. Several people had gathered around us, watching the emotional reunion. Then, from down the hallway, a flash of color caught my eye. Bright red. Oh, I gasped. It was Papa, looking older and more frail. He was walking with Mama's red umbrella as his cane. So let's pause here. Papa is walking with the red umbrella as his cane. So I want you to think really hard about what is happening in this book. Why did the author choose to have Papa walking with the red umbrella? Oops, I forgot a word here. With the red umbrella. And I want you to think about the first time it was mentioned on page 30. So go ahead and flip back in your book to page 30 and then answer this question. Lucy, Frankie, he shouted, hobbling his way to us. Thank you, Lord, Mrs. Baxter exclaimed. We let go of Mamma to devour Papa with hugs and kisses. Como, how were you able to? My brain was almost unable to accept that he was here. I told you I'd find a way, he smiled. I breathed in the familiar scent of his cologne and cigars. But they wouldn't give you a visa. He dropped the umbrella and stroked my hair. Details aren't important. I have friends in the underground who helped me. Plus, some of those Cuban officers have a price. There was no need to know any more. I didn't care. As we all hugged, I caught a glimpse of Mr. and Mrs. Baxter wiping away their own tears. They were happy for us. Even Mr. Baxter was smiling. I bent down to pick up that beautiful red umbrella. Mamma was right. Red stood for strength, the strength of our family. We would start over in a new place and be just as strong as before. So pause here. And for our last annotation, I want you to fill in this sentence. Lucia feels, and then think about how she feels here, and even how the red umbrella makes her feel. I smiled as Papa shook Mr. Baxter's hand and Mamma gave Mrs. Baxter a hug. The Alvarez family was together again, all of us, here in our new country. I took a deep breath and slowly let it out. It was good to be home.